It is exactly noon. And as some of you may know, that at Housing Action Illinois, we like to be prompt. So even though I know that some people are still joining us, I want to go ahead and get started. Hi, everyone. Welcome. I'm Sharon Lagenza, Executive Director of Housing Action Illinois, and I use she, her pronouns. Thank you for joining us today. We're excited to try out a different format for our member meeting this year and are looking forward to a great convening. First, a couple of housekeeping items. We're recording this meeting, so if you prefer not to be recorded, please turn off your camera and feel free to rename yourself. If you'd like to see automated live captioning, please look in your Zoom menu bar to find and turn on live transcript. If you would like to save a copy of the transcript at the end of the meeting, click View Full Transcript and then Save Transcript. Our ASL interpreters will be spotlighted, and we've coordinated with participants who requested ASL interpretation prior to the meeting. If you would like to coordinate access to ASL interpretation now, please message accessibility support in chat. Our staff member, Mayor Ralph, will be able to help you. And thanks to everyone who submitted questions for our panelists ahead of time. As you'll hear, we've had to make some last-minute adjustments because of the General Assembly's late session last night. You're welcome to put additional questions in the chat as the meeting goes on, and we'll get to those ourselves or ask the legislators to respond if possible at a later date. Because we usually pair our member meeting with our annual conference, we wanted to take this opportunity to thank this year's conference sponsors as well. And in particular, JP Morgan Chase as our platinum level sponsor and PNC and US Bank as our gold level sponsors. We appreciate their and everyone's support. You can find the link to this year's conference in the chat. Now, I'd like to turn the meeting over to Housing Action's board co-chair, Carl Wolf of Respond Now, to get the business portion of our meeting started. Carl?
Thank you, Sharon, and welcome everybody. I'd like to formally call the meeting to order. We're going to go through the organizational business first, and then we'll go to our legislator roundtable. So first of all, thank you to our board of directors who provide guidance to Housing Action Illinois. Our board members have diverse, affordable housing and homeless prevention expertise, and we represent communities from throughout the state. Housing Action could not do what it does without this board support, and you see the members of the board on your screen, including a picture of myself from way back when. And the Housing Action Illinois staff, well, you know, clearly none of this work could get done, though, without the Housing Action staff. We're pleased to introduce a few new staff members who have joined since our last membership meeting. This includes Faluka Khani, who is our housing policy organizer, and excuse me, you can correct me, Mari Ralph, the National Service Program Associate. We also want to thank our new AmeriCorps members, Caitlin Greenholt and James Miller. So welcome to the new staff members at Housing Action. You have joined a wonderful organization. So now I'd like to introduce for adoption the minutes from our 2020 membership. From our 2020 membership meeting. Give me 1 second here, sorry.
And I'll just remind participants that the member minutes can be found in the materials that we emailed out as well as now in the chat.
Yes, thank you, Sharon. And so if Caitlin will share the link to the minutes in the chat, maybe she has already done so. I believe she has. So the minutes are there if you have not had a chance to review them. So can I get a motion and a second via the chat box to accept the minutes from last year's membership meeting? And Sharon, do you want to read out the motion in a second?
Yep, I see that Bob Campbell from Zion Development Corporation motioned and Jackie Newman from Springfield Public Housing Authority seconded.
All right, so now we will vote via a Zoom poll. All in favor of accepting the minutes, select aye. All opposed, vote nay, and any abstentions may choose the abstain option or refrain from participating in the poll. And you should see the Zoom poll there on your screen. We'll keep this open for 30 seconds or so.
And the poll did pop up for me, so I'm assuming everyone else is seeing the poll as well.
All right, and here we have the results, and so the minutes pass unanimously. Thank you.
Great.
So Sharon, I will pass it on to you for the board slate.
Great. Thanks. And the next part of our organizational business is to elect new and renewing board members. So I'd like to introduce the proposed slate for adoption as presented. We have Carl Wolf from Respond Now, who you've met. John Herring from the Illinois Network of Centers for Independent Living. Horacio Mendez from the Woodstock Institute, and Shelley Richardson from the Statewide Independent Living Council of Illinois. Carl, John, and Shelley are seeking renewals, and Horacio is seeking to join the board as a new member. Short bios of these candidates can be found in the meeting packet. So if people have had a chance to look at the materials, can I have a motion and a second to approve this proposed board slate entered via the chat box? And I see that Jackie has moved. She's quick typing. And can I have a second, please? Oh, and Bob, okay. Hopefully others are out there, but we will go ahead and take that. And we're gonna have another poll via Zoom chat to accept or to vote yes or no or abstain for this proposed board slate. And we're going to give people a couple of seconds to do that. Okay, so in terms of the board slate, it is approved unanimously at 54%, with the remaining 46% abstaining. So I want to welcome, congratulations to all of the Horacio as a new board member and to all of the renewing board members. We really do appreciate your time and service to Housing Action Illinois and sharing all of your expertise. So the next piece of business, which is always a little bit bittersweet, but we do have a board member who is departing the board, and that's Dottie Johnson of Family Focus. Dottie has been part of Housing Action Illinois for many, many years, even prior to her board service, because she provided contract accounting services for us. And we know that she'll continue to be a support and a resource for Housing Action, even though she'll no longer be on the board. So please join me in thanking Dottie. And like I said, I know we'll see her around. So with that, that is actually, if people do not have any questions, that actually is it for what we need to vote on. And I would turn it back to Carl to see if we want to adjourn the business portion of the meeting.
Thanks, Sharon. So yes, we will adjourn the business portion of the meeting by consensus. So adjourning the board business portion of our meeting by consensus. If I guess if you disagree, you should put so in the chat. If you have any further, and then if you have any further questions, please put them in the chat. Otherwise, I will turn this over to your favorite advocate in the state of Illinois, and mine, Bob Palmer, for our roundtable with state legislators. Thank you. Bob?
Thanks, Carl. You have such a way with words. So again, I'm Bob Palmer. I'm the policy director here at Housing Action Illinois. As Sharon said, we had to do a bit of improvisation on the meeting today because the General Assembly was in session very late last night. I think the Senate adjourned like at 1:30 a.m. and the House adjourned sometime earlier in the evening, but not too much earlier in the evening. They were working on the census remap of the legislative districts and also on clean energy and other issues, not housing, not last night, but we'll be talking to legislators today about what we did in the previous General Assembly session, what we plan to do with them in the future. But we are going to have, we invited 4 legislators to participate today a couple months ago, well before we knew that there was going to be a special session on that day. And for a second, we thought that maybe they might be in session today, but they're not. So that makes our annual meeting easier. But those legislators are, and you will hear from them all today, but 3 of the 4 of them you're actually going to hear from on video. And we'll have 1 legislator in person. So the legislator we're going to have in person is Senator Ann Gillespie, who's from the 27th District, Arlington Heights, and some of the Northwest suburbs. I'm not sure if she's joined the meeting right now. I saw her staff person, I believe, is Jack Larkhart, sign in. So maybe in the chat, he can let us know if Senator Gillespie's on, or maybe Senator Gillespie's using Jack's Zoom account. So we'll be hearing from her. We'll be doing like a 15-minute interview with her in just a few minutes. And then we'll be hearing from Senator Mattie Hunter, Will Guzzardi, and Delia Ramirez from videos that were either shot just minutes ago, or I think Senator Hunter did her video last night. It looked like it was dark outside from the window in her office at the Capitol. So we feel like those are really engaging presentations. We will unfortunately be a bit limited in terms of being able to take questions from the audience and so forth. But what you're looking on right now is a slide on some of our successes from the 2021 General Assembly session that we worked with many of you on this meeting today as our partners and allies. We'll be talking about many of these things with the legislators we're about to hear from. One is an affordable housing omnibus bill that we worked with Senator Gillespie, Senator Hunter, Senator Sarah Feigenholtz. We worked with Rep. Guzzardi and Representative Ramirez in the House to pass that. Some of our key organizational partners were the Illinois Housing Council, Preservation Compact, Metropolitan Planning Council, Enterprise Community Partners. Basically, there's several different provisions in this bill. There's like 7 different provisions, but basically they all increase resources to develop affordable rental housing, which is of course one of the main reasons that Housing Illinois exists as an organization to further that. Some of it's direct funding, some of it's property tax incentives, some of it, and we'll talk about this with Senator Gillespie, are provisions in the Affordable Housing Planning and Appeals Act that encourage or require local governments where there isn't much affordable housing, more affluent communities to do planning to get more affordable housing in their community, both rental and home ownership. We're going to talk with Representative Ramirez in particular about the COVID-19 Emergency Housing Act that set rules and guidelines for how the state of Illinois is currently spending all the emergency rental assistance to address the pandemic and keep people housed and prevent evictions. It also very importantly seals eviction records going backward to the beginning of the pandemic and through March of 2022. In most all cases, most all evictions, I think people know, are just because people can't afford the rent. And we've strongly felt like that, particularly during the pandemic, but even at other times as well, that people having an eviction on the record should not be a major obstacle to them finding affordable housing. So we'd actually been working on that issue for a few years, but during the pandemic, we were able to pass the bill with the support of Representative Ramirez as part of this Emergency Housing Act. And that bill also prohibits tenant screening companies from disseminating sealed eviction records, and also had some homeowner protections. And then this is another issue that we touched with Representative Ramirez on. We are very glad that the state of Illinois continued to be a leader in investing federal dollars to address the pandemic and affordable housing and to end homelessness. In the last year, in 2020, the state of Illinois invested more than any other state in the nation, about $325 million in emergency rent and mortgage assistance. And then this year, Illinois was one of just a handful of states that took dollars from the American Rescue Plan and committed them for affordable housing. So that was actually part of the COVID-19 emergency, or that was part of the omnibus bill, I'm sorry, I should say, not the Emergency Housing Act. And I also wanted to, before we get to Sarah Gillespie, just acknowledge the partnership that we had on the Emergency Housing Act with the Lawyers Committee for Better Housing and the Shriver Center on Poverty Law. And then also, I know particularly Representative Guzzardi will talk about establishing a housing committee in the House. So do we have Sarah Gillespie queued up to join us? Can someone let me know that?
I am here.
Oh, okay, great. Thanks so much. And are people seeing Sarah Gillespie in the spotlight? I just want to make sure that's the case. Okay, very good. Well, thanks so much for joining us, Sarah Gillespie. You get extra credit for actually being here in person. But we very much appreciate everyone who did the videos too. It takes a certain amount of technological effort and know-how, so we appreciate everyone who did that. So obviously, we've worked with you your entire time in the General Assembly. I said just a little bit about your district, but maybe you could just start off by talking for a couple minutes about your interest in housing issues, kind of where that comes from, and also a bit about your district, and maybe just like one issue, or if you do it briefly, two issues that are particularly big housing issues in the district you represent.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for having me here today. It's been a pleasure working with all of your groups to make some impact on affordable housing. We did some good work, but we've got a ways to go still. My interest in affordable housing stems from my family history. When I was in grade school, my father was injured in a plane crash, and the resulting medical impacts and financial impacts from that resulted in my family losing our home. And so while I was fortunate to not be homeless in the sense of living in shelters, we did have severe housing instability for quite a few years following that. So when I got to the legislature, that was an issue that was of particular interest to me. And while I was campaigning, I talked to many people in the district, particularly seniors, who were facing challenges of being able to afford to stay in the communities they've lived in for the last 20, 30 years because of the cost of housing as the suburbs further gentrify and housing becomes more and more expensive. So that became an important thing for me to try to do from a constituent standpoint, was to try to help with senior housing. And then the third area of interest that I also had a lot of people come up to me during the campaign, there's a big issue in the suburbs, is housing for individuals that need supportive living, those with mental health issues, those with disabilities, adults with disabilities, and seniors that need a little bit, are not independent living anymore. And so that was another area where we're seeing more housing needs in the suburbs and units being developed. So those are I guess I kind of summed up both, Bob, my history and some of the issues that are facing us. The particular issue that was a little different from the issues in the city is that out in the suburbs, it's not a question of rehabilitation so much as a question of new construction.
Right.
And we don't have enough multi-family stock in the suburbs. And so it's building some more of that can be appropriate and making sure there's set-asides there for affordable units.
Very good. So maybe you could talk a bit about the omnibus bill. We got the photo on the website of you and Senator Hunter and Senator Feigenholtz all standing together. I think it was the photo was taken just after the Affordable Housing Omnibus Bill, House Bill 2621. There's bill numbers over the course of the session, but that was the final one passed in the Senate. That maybe you could just tell us a bit of kind of the background about how you and Senator Hunter and Senator Feigenholtz came to work together on this.
Sure. So I had started to put together a bill out in the suburbs. One of the challenges we have is developers taking advantage of the in lieu of a lot, and suburbs not requiring a whole lot of money in lieu of, and then it doesn't ever seem to find its way into housing support. So it just kind of sits there in limbo. So I started to get interested in putting together a bill that would address some of that and do some of the correction enforcement type things for the existing statute. And then in talking with then Senate President Cullerton, I picked up his bill on affordable housing, the property tax credit for new construction. Partnered with Senator Hunter, who'd been working on affordable housing issues for quite some time and was interested in, had introduced a bill on tax credits for low-income families. And then Senator Feigenholtz, when she came over from the House, brought with her bill to do the rehabilitation tax credit. And so as we realized the three of us had these bills, we thought if we could put them together in an omnibus, we'd have a package that could address a lot of housing issues across the state and would have flexibility to have an option for all kinds of communities and what their particular needs would be. And so that's why we put it together and worked on an omnibus. Both Senate and House leadership were very supportive of helping us get it through. We ran into a little bit of a wrinkle when ARPA came out because it prohibits tax credits for a couple of years during the term of the ARPA funding. So that's when we took the ARPA money and turned it into grants instead. And that, a little bit of evolution along the way. But the particular provisions of mine that we haven't talked about yet are some of the enforcement provisions for the existing law. And what they focused on doing was making it more enforceable. So it requires that we had a lot of suburbs who were claiming home rule exemption from having to file an affordable housing plan. So we made it clear that home rule does not apply. We gave IDA and the Attorney General enhanced enforcement capability, and the Attorney General now has writ of mandamus authority to take action against any suburb that doesn't file, any town that doesn't file. We added to the definition of affordable housing to include landlord imposed fees. That's a big issue out here where landlords will add a parking fee or something like that. And if that's not included in the definition of affordable, it can have an adverse impact on the pricing of the unit. And we also tightened up the donations in lieu of. One of the things I'd originally was going to ban that altogether, but Bob helped educate me on some of the advantages of the donations. And so we opted to tighten it up instead.
Great. Oh, thanks. Well, we really do appreciate you having a focus, obviously, on housing. That's what we're all about, but specifically that Affordable Housing Planning and Appeals Act. For those that don't know, that's a bill that's been or a state law that's been in place in Illinois for many years now, and it has had some positive impact. And basically what it does is, for those that don't know, the state of Illinois, through the Illinois Housing Development Authority, every few years calculates how much affordable housing every community has. And if a community based on this particular measure has less than 10% affordable housing, which at any one time is maybe about 60 communities in Illinois, mostly in northern Cook County and Lake County, but some in other parts of the state as well. And those communities are required to do a housing plan and set some goals to get up to that 10%. Obviously, there's more than just those communities in Illinois that have a shortage of affordable housing, but at the time the bill was passed many years ago, that's what how it was negotiated. So that law has been extremely helpful in sort of getting many communities to do plans, and then also just in generating conversations in communities among, individuals and their elected officials about, what are their affordable housing needs. But there always have been a significant number of communities that just have not engaged with that law or complied with that law, and they use the rationalization that there was no language in the law specifically that home rule communities in Illinois have to comply. And so that was something actually for many years we were kind of struggling with how to fix. And it was actually with your leadership that we're able to finally get that done. So we very much appreciate that. Then also going back to the, say one more thing and then maybe ask you a bit more about the property tax incentives. So we came to, it was actually to then Representative Feigenholz and then Senator Feigenholz with a package of property tax incentives to encourage owners of properties, either new construction or rehab, to invest in their building. And if they do that and keep the rents affordable, they'll get a reduction in their assessed value, which will eventually lead to them getting a lower property tax bill. I think when we met with you about it, you made the important point that, for the particular housing market in the communities that you represent, where, I think, as you said earlier, there's really a need for like new construction to get more affordable rental housing. The incentives and what we were proposing weren't significant enough. So we worked with you and many others over the course of weeks and months to kind of come up with a higher level of incentive. So can you talk a bit more about that, or kind of, what you're hoping that will accomplish?
Mm-hmm. So two things in particular. One is we wanted to make sure that the housing commitment was sizable, that it was for a long period of time. So this particular set of incentives is applicable for housing that maintains 20% of the units at affordable levels for 30 years. And in order to give an incentive to do that, it provides a sliding scale of property tax incentives. So for the first 3 years, they pay the base rate, and they get basically a waiver of the difference between the increasing value of the property as they develop it and that base rate. And then over the next 17 years, the law will, 27 years, they get it goes up to the next year, they get a tax waiver of 80% of that difference, and then 60% and 40% and so on, until we get to the end of the 30 years, so that they continue to get some slightly smaller each 3 years incentive to maintain those units affordable for 30 years. They have to make that commitment up front in order to get the taxing incentive. The reason why we wanted to do it this way, it is a richer tax benefit than the one aimed at rehabs, because of the cost of new construction. When you run the numbers, the rehab numbers just didn't provide enough of an incentive to get a developer to do this. And secondly, we wanted to, the secondary purpose of doing this in the low affordability areas, which are generally the suburbs and certain parts of the city of Chicago, is that we really, it also serves the purpose of helping to diversify those communities by having more affordable housing, both in terms of age, again, senior housing being an issue, and many other identifiers of diversity, trying to make the communities more vibrant. And so that was another one of the rationales for doing this.
Great, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, and again, that permanent, thanks for stressing that, the 30 years of affordability. So to get that higher level of property tax reduction, you have to do a much greater investment in your building. You have to commit to 30 years of affordability and meet other requirements as well. So, and if you didn't get all the details or so forth, you can, people can email me. We have a fact sheet on the bill, and the program's not quite available yet. We anticipate in Cook County and other counties in Illinois as well. It'll be available as soon as 2022. So Senator Gillespie, just one more quick question about just kind of looking forward. I know it's hard to tell, and you were up very late to while you were in session to 1:30 in the morning.
That's right.
So you might not have all your thoughts together, but if you could say just anything briefly kind of about your thinking about going forward on housing priorities. I know one thing we talked with you and other members of the General Assembly about are the federal fiscal recovery funds. In Illinois, again, as I said at the beginning, was one of the few states that did commit significant dollars from the federal fiscal recovery funds for affordable housing, including $75 million for to develop more housing through the low-income housing tax credit for rental housing. But if you could talk about maybe future opportunities for that or anything else or other issues that you're kind of thinking about.
Well, yeah, and I saw in the chat a question. So one of the things that we want to get a better understanding of and try to craft some solutions for is the number of unclaimed credits, people that are eligible for that don't apply, people that are eligible for rental assistance and aren't applying for it, aren't getting it. And how do we make sure that people are taking advantage of all of the things that are out there now? And so that's one thing we need to be looking at and get our arms around what are the drivers of that, so we can craft appropriate solutions. We're trying to do things like better communication, working with community groups to get the word out. We're posting it. They give us graphics to post on our social media, all the legislators, making sure that people alert. And so it seems like every few weeks I'm putting up another one about rental assistance to make sure people know about it. Another area that I'd like to tackle is mortgage assistance. And that's another area that we still are feeling some of the ramifications of statutes that permitted redlining back in the day. And the impacts of that are still with us. And so that's my next thing that I'd like to work on is something along the lines that would address the impacts of redlining.
Excellent. Well, we look forward to talking to you about that and figure out if we can work together on that. I'm sure we can. And then also, for those that don't know, the Illinois Housing Development Authority, IDA, later this year in the fall, hopefully maybe later in September, but I don't have an exact date, we'll be launching a mortgage assistance program to complement the rent assistance dollars that are already out there to assist people for the pandemic. So, well, I think we'll let you go, Senator Gillespie. We do really appreciate you joining us, and this is obviously part of an ongoing dialogue. So we'll talk to you soon.
Very good. Thanks so much for having me. Have a good rest of your meeting.
Okay, very
Bye-bye.
good. So now, before we get into these videos, I think we're going to pause and see if there's any questions or comments. I did look at the chat. I saw there's one about the rent assistance dollars being unclaimed. And if people have other questions, they can put them in the chat right now. I know all of us at Housing Action Illinois, including my colleague, Sheila Sutton, my fellow housing policy organizer, and our newest staff person, Fuluke Akane, who just started. And then also I know our housing counseling capacity building staff have a role in also getting the word out. We are very much working to make sure everyone knows about, and maybe Kristen or someone can put this in the chat, the Illinois Rental Assistance .org website, which is the main place you should go if people are still in need of rental assistance. The Illinois Housing Development Authority web portal is currently closed. It will reopen later this year, but there are service providers that have been contracted with through the Illinois Department of Human Services that people can contact with yesterday and today and tomorrow, and on an ongoing basis to apply for rent assistance, not through an online web portal, but through a written application or other means. So that is still available. And I know that IDA is really processing working to process all the currently outstanding applications, I believe, by the end of September. There are also some county governments and if some agencies that the city of Chicago is delegated with that still do have rent assistance available. So we also have a page on our website that maybe Kristen can put in the chat about where that's available. So I know it's very, and we're not involved at all in sort of implementing the programs, but we are following it very closely in a regular contact with the governor's office and the different state agencies. So, it's not been without frustration or challenges getting these dollars out. I think that's what, unfortunately to be expected when you're spending such large amount of money in a short amount of time. Illinois is doing very well compared to other states, and admittedly, it's a very low bar that most other states have sent because they've spent like 5%, 4%, less in single digits on their money. Many states, Illinois is like in the top 5 or 6 states, I believe, and has spent over 40% of the dollars available in this round. And again, it's really, funding more people every day and getting those dollars out. So that's something we're working on. And then also we're very pleased that even though the Governor Pritzker, or even though the federal government through the Supreme Court struck down the Biden administration CDC moratorium, there are still eviction prevention, legal eviction prevention resources in Illinois, including Governor Pritzker's executive order, which is through September 18th, but we understand he's going to extend through October 3rd when the CDC moratorium was supposed to last for, and then the Illinois Supreme Court is still staying eviction cases against covered persons, so those cases can be referred to rent assistance. So we have a lot more protections than in most other states, so we're very glad about that. Have other questions come in that we want to quickly deal with before we get to the video?
There was a question, Bob, around how can we address the housing crisis that is being created in which there are properties available, however, they are either too expensive or unaffordable to those looking?
Well, there's not just one way. I know one thing that we're actually working on now, and maybe someone else can put this in the chat too, our action alert on our federal level advocacy. And right now we're focused on the infrastructure bill, not the bipartisan one, although it'll be good if that passes, but the one that's partisan, or what people are calling the reconciliation bill, that at this point is only being supported by Democrats. Hopefully it will become bipartisan. And that bill includes well over $330 billion based on the House and Senate proposals for affordable housing, and it's for rental housing and homeownership and ending homelessness. One of the things in there is a new tax credit that would essentially complement the federal low-income housing tax credit for affordable rental housing, but this would be for homeownership and in those communities where, exactly as the person who posed the question put forward, where the cost of rehabbing a home is higher than what the sales price would be on the market. This tax credit would fill the gap. So let's say it costs, $180,000 to acquire and rehab the home and get it ready to sell, but you can't sell it for $180,000 based on the property values in those communities. So this tax credit would fill the gap. So maybe you would sell it for $120,000 or whatever the market value is in the community, and the tax credit would fill that $60,000 gap. So that's one way, and that's we have a whole lot of stuff we're doing on homeownership, including working on appraisal bias, which is another issue. So if people want to find out more about that, they can get in contact with Sheila in our office. So.
I was wondering, maybe we should go to your interview with Representative Ramirez, and we can come back to some questions, but people should continue to post them.
Yes, so this interview, and I'm going to start my screen sharing process right now. Hold on one second. Just save me a second. I want to get ready here and make sure I got the right video up front. Okay, I think, hold on. I'm not seeing the video. Okay, I'm going to share the screen. Go ahead and share the screen. People will see my computer desktop just for a second. People, I think, are seeing Mattie Hunter here, but let's try and switch to, oh, there we go. Okay, so it's a black screen, but just in a second, we'll be seeing Leader Ramirez. So this video is about 15 minutes. We recorded it just like 11 a.m. Today, and Representative Ramirez is was still in Springfield at that point after the General Assembly. So we really kind of talked about the same things that we're going to talk about at the Zoom meeting today. There might be a little overlap with what we talked with Senator Gillespie about. So again, this is about 15 minutes, and we'll come back and do a couple more questions, and then we have some more video. We are recording this session, so we know people might have to tune out, but the recording will be available. So here we go. Here's Leader Ramirez and I asking the questions. Okay. Well, thanks, Representative Ramirez, for. I think I made a mistake. I know it was sharing the sound. Okay. So here again, maybe we'll edit this out of the video if we have time, but if not, that's okay too. Okay, we'll run this back to the beginning. Okay. Okay. Well, thanks, Representative Ramirez, for joining us for our annual meeting today. We know you had a very late night in Springfield last night, along with other members of the General Assembly. So we look forward to showing this video at our annual meeting today. Obviously, we've worked with you for many years at Housing Action Illinois, but there may be some people participating in the annual meeting today who are not familiar with you or the work that you do. So maybe you could just start off by telling us a bit about your background and the development of your interest and focus on housing issues in the General Assembly, and you could talk about maybe just one housing need in your district.
Sure. It's a pleasure to be with you, and I was hoping to be in the panel, but I'll be on the road, as many of my colleagues will be this morning, hopefully heading back to our districts. So my passion for housing started in my early teens. My church started a homeless shelter back in the late 80s, early 90s, in the near northwest side of the city of Chicago, in Logan Square and Humboldt Park, as gentrification and displacement really started taking a lot of these neighborhoods and forcing a lot of families, not just out of their apartment, but many of them into homeless shelters. So I began working there at the age of 17 when I thought that I'd be going to law school after undergrad. And what ended up happening was that I was there for about 13 years and really developed my passion to help people and really get to the root cause of homelessness. What's the housing insecurity? And that's really what I've taken with me as I've gone into the legislature, really hoping to work with others, which we've done a lot of in the past year and a half, prioritizing housing and seeing the interconnections with everything else.
Very good. And what's one housing need that you're very focused on in your district currently?
Yeah, I would say affordability. So really preserving the affordable housing we have, both of tenants, but also of landlords. My district is a district that has changed significantly in the last 10 years. You've seen properties quadruple in some cases, and families who've been there 40, 50 years who now are saying, you know, even though I just finished paying off my home after loan, these property taxes are making it nearly impossible to stay here. Or people who have rented for many, many years and go to our neighborhood schools who are saying, my rents are now double the amount. So I have to move, and I have to move very far. So really wanting to stabilize the community and really preserve the culture and community we've had there for so long.
Very good. And remind me now, how many years have you been in the General Assembly?
A whole 3 whole years.
3 whole years, and you're already.
Which, you know, in this work feels like maybe 10, depending on the day.
And you're already assistant majority leader, which is quite the accomplishment.
I'm honored. I'm honored to be here.
Congratulations on that. But I know since we've worked with you since the beginning of your time in the General Assembly, you've been very active and focused on actually increasing the number of your fellow legislators who are focused on affordable housing. Of course, many have been for many years, but there's so many important issues, and both doing that in urban communities such as what you represent, and suburban communities and rural communities. We're going to be hearing from Representative Guzzardi a little later in the meeting, hopefully through his video. But can you talk a little bit about kind of the work you've done with Representative Guzzardi and others in the House and even in the Senate to kind of build more of a coalition of legislators that's focused on affordable housing, ending homelessness, and related issues?
Yeah. Well, first, I have to say in this video, and as I say often, that working with Chairman Guzzardi, who now chairs the Housing Committee, has made it possible for us to be able to move the work that we've done for a long time. He, as well as a couple of other members, have really been pushing the conversation of housing. That is not just a federal issue or a local issue, that the state can really play a vital role in stabilizing housing here in Illinois. So I just want to say kudos to him and just thankful for his leadership. The agency I used to run is actually in his district. So I know that area well, and we're neighbors districts. I'd say to you that being able to develop and restart a housing committee. We've had one in the past. We hadn't had one in at least, I think, 8 years. We've had a committee before, but to be able to get this housing committee going again under his leadership with really like about 23 members, both on both sides of the aisle, who have demonstrated their interest really working on housing, is remarkable and is telling of what the need is and our understanding how it impacts education, how it impacts healthcare, how it impacts stability as a whole. So I'd say to you that it is exciting times here in Springfield now and at the state level, where you have so many of us on both sides of the aisle talking about affordability, talking about the importance of property taxes, but also how to address homelessness and prevent it from happening. And it was clear to see a lot of that in the bills that we brought to the committee this past session, many bills that we were able to move out of the House and Senate and now have been signed into law.
Very good, very good. And obviously we look forward to working with you and other members of the General Assembly on an ongoing basis on all this. I have a couple more questions for you for this particular interview. One, if you could talk about the COVID-19 Emergency Housing Act that Housing Action Illinois worked with the Shriver Center and Lawyers Committee for Better Housing and many other groups around the state, and you and Senator Aquino in particular to pass earlier this year. Can you talk about kind of the impact that's having and kind of the process for passing the bill?
Yeah, but I mean, you and I have been working on housing issues way before I was in the legislature. I know a number of you for a very long time. And we knew that there were issues in housing crisis in the state of Illinois, certainly in Chicago, when people have to work 2.5 full-time jobs just to pay their rent or to be able to keep their home. This pandemic put it all at the forefront. The number of people that were being infected as a result of living in multi-generational housing, or because they were overcrowded in shelters that we were trying to help alleviate some of the population and relocate, made it very, very clear that unless we address housing and the housing insecurity and the number of people that could be in the streets because of this pandemic, we were going to see a major eviction crisis, and we were going to see a number of people literally die from COVID. And so this is why a number of us got together and started working last year. And I remember last April, as we developed the housing working group, a number of the organizations came together and said, we have to put together the most comprehensive emergency housing legislation right now. There's work to be done to develop and build affordable housing, which we just passed too, that's going to impact it for years to come, and we'll need that. But right now, how do we make sure that people that have a home stay in their home? And how do we make sure those that need it have a stable, safe, high quality place to live? And finally, how do we make sure that people who, unfortunately, because these eviction moratoriums will be lifted, that they won't have an eviction record on their, in their background that will become just another barrier to permanent housing for the years to come. What we ended up passing this past April was a bill that, yes, was heavily negotiated, but I truly believe has saved lives. We have enacted provisions for the emergency housing relief programs, the rental payment program that we're administering through IDA and in partnership with the Department of Human Services, making sure that people that need the assistance the most get it as soon as possible. It's why Illinois is one of the states that's leading the effort in dispersing assistance across the state of Illinois. We made sure that we put in the legislation something that we knew the federal government was allowing, but we needed to make sure that was loud and clear, that no lease would be required and legal status was not a requirement in order for people to get this assistance. We knew the federal government had made it possible for people to be able to apply without these two things, but for education, because we knew people were living in fear, we needed to make sure that information was there. And then finally, we wanted to make sure there was transparency on where people were on their status of application. And we were able to put those provisions there, making sure that those who owe the most and people who are at risk of homelessness can get that assistance as soon as possible. That was one piece. But let me tell you the thing that we didn't talk too much about, perhaps intentionally. We passed historical legislation to automatically seal any eviction filings in the state of Illinois between March of 2020 through March of 2022. That's up until next year. That means that if there was an eviction filing that already happened now or will happen after the moratorium is lifted, that record will not be available by third parties or others to use as a means to discriminate for housing. People will get a clean slate. We're the first state to do so. Not sure anyone else has done it. But this is going to be critical for the stability of people here in Illinois so that they could really, hopefully, get a fresh start as we hope to be able to recover, certainly from the pandemic and even now the Delta variant. And finally, we put in some homeowner protections to make sure that our landlords, our homeowners, are able to be stabilized and protected through this pandemic.
Very good, yes. And so, obviously the ceiling had been something we've been working on with you for many years. And so we are very pleased and satisfied to see it finally pass in the recently completed General Assembly session and have Governor Pritzker sign it into law. One more quick question for you. If you could just spend a minute or two talking about kind of issues you're focused on for the future. I know one thing that we are interested in is that we're very glad that in the recently completed General Assembly session as part of next year's budget, the state of Illinois did commit significant funding from the federal fiscal recovery funds for affordable housing purposes to develop more housing through the low-income housing tax credit and to start a pilot program for rental subsidies for people with severe mental illness or substance use disorder. And there's also dollars for supportive housing and homeless youth. So obviously we're interested because there's dollars that haven't been obligated on that and future opportunities to try and get more of those resources for affordable housing and address needs related to the pandemic. So that's one thing I'm telling you are interested in, you already know, but if you could quickly comment on any opportunities for that, and then maybe just one other issue, maybe in addition that you're particularly focused on at this moment on for the future.
Yeah, I'd say that we've made a significant stride in really investing dollars in affordable housing, but we still have a lot more to do. And as you mentioned, Bob, there is still a significant amount of money that we have not allocated from the federal relief dollars that the state has available for all municipalities across the state. Our commitment, and I know Chairman Guzzardi and I share this commitment, and also will work really hard to make it happen with Progressive Caucus members, both in the House and Senate, is to really get closer to $1 billion in allocation. We have about $250 million that we know already are allocated for different levels of affordable housing. You just mentioned many of those. We are hoping to be able to allocate a significant amount more because we know we're going to need more. There are different areas that we did not really spend too much focus on. Some of that is additional dollars around homelessness, right? And rapid rehousing. helping districts who have been using hotels and want to do more supportive housing and not go back to the traditional shelter model, being able to acquire property and do so, but also shelters, making sure that shelters have the resource assistance they need, particularly on capital and operating expenses for their programs. The other piece that we didn't talk much about, two pieces I'd say, is housing for people with records. That's going to be a major piece that we want to see the legislature really focus earmark dollars for. And then really, again, around the supportive housing, making sure that we are working and dedicating dollars to people who need accessibility and people who don't have that. I mean, we know in Chicago that only 10% of buildings are handicap accessible. We want to make sure that we're focusing some of that. So my hope is to work with Rep. Guzzardi. We've been wanting to get this done in the summer. We'll do some in the fall, is do a few hearings out of the Housing Committee in the House and hear from a number of you on ideas that you have on where to spend this money. I know you have them. I know a number of you on this panel have that. We want to hear that, and we want to bring that back to our colleagues to hopefully do more of that during veto and in the coming year. Final, I would say to you that the place that we need to continue to do more work on is assisting the tenants who will be impacted regardless of these extended moratoriums on evictions. Once this eviction moratorium is completely lifted, there's some work to be done, and we look to all of you to help us guide what some of these policies could be, while making sure also that we're addressing the issues of our small landlords who want to continue to provide affordable housing.
Excellent. Well, again, we look forward to working with you and others on that. And thank you for joining us for our annual meeting today. We'll be in further discussions with you in the coming weeks and months about the hearings and all the other things we talked about and things we didn't talk about today, because there's so much going on and unfortunately so many needs that we would need to have a much longer discussion to talk about it all. So again, thanks so much for being one of our key champions in Springfield, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, Bob. Okay,
there you go. So maybe some people heard it here first about the major investment that our allies in the General Assembly and us obviously too are focused on with these additional federal fiscal recovery funds that haven't been appropriated. Obviously, there's lots of needs. So housing, I know, is just one of the things that's in the universe of that people are talking about in terms of how to use the funds, including covering Illinois' unemployment fund deficit. But even after that, we understand there's still a few billion dollars that the General Assembly, working with the governor, will have to appropriate. So we look forward to working with all of you on that in the coming months. So we do still have videos to watch from Senator Hunter and Will Guzzardi. Before we do that, are there questions that have come in or anything we should discuss before going on to other?
Yeah, there have been some questions. There, some of them might be a little bit take some time to address, but one of them was, is there currently mortgage assistance for investors that we know of?
Assistance for investors. Well, as I said, there's late in the fall, the Illinois Housing Development Authority is starting a mortgage assistance program for homeowners. I'm not totally sure. I don't believe investors will be eligible for that, but that Neighborhood Homes Investment Act would be a vehicle for communities to rehab homes and sell them, and so that would be eligible, I believe, for-profit, but also nonprofit companies to take advantage of, and that would be administered through the state of Illinois if that passes. So that's a while off now. So I think that's the best.
And then the only other thing I'd say is someone commented that IDHS's service provider website list is not accurate, and we'll pass that on. But that is an issue that we know that IDHS is aware of and is working on to correct, although we want to hear if there's inaccuracy so that we can also forward it to them.
Exactly, yes. Yes, and I know that the website's being updated on a regular basis with new agencies being added in and so forth. So, but we'll pass that along.
Yeah, sorry, I made a written note of that, so we'll make sure we email that to IDHS as well. And then we had a question around assisting homeowners with repairs that, kind of rehab dollars. And the idea that, if some homeowners end up being unable to get insurance because of the repairs that are needed. So it becomes this kind of downward spiral. And so are there any plans to advocate for rehab dollars or repair dollars for homeowners?
That's an excellent question. I don't have an immediate answer. There are existing programs that are out there that are available, but obviously the demand and need is so far more than the supply. I will say the one thing that people can look at it, and I was just looking at it earlier today, is that the White House and is really trying to be proactive on housing issues, especially in light of the Supreme Court striking down the eviction moratorium. So they put out a series of press releases or statements in recent weeks about things they're doing to prevent evictions and deal with affordable housing. So actually just today, they put out another one, and there were several things that were homeownership focused, both on promoting homeownership, but also the preservation of affordable housing. So I can't quote the details now, but I think if people look at that, I'm confident there is some stuff in there for home repair. And if the person who asked that question wants to follow up with us after the meeting, we can give them some more details or ideas.
Great. And then the final question that's outstanding has to do with release and satisfaction of judgment in court and attorneys. And I think that this is something that is a good one to kind of put with the work we're doing with Laura's Committee for Better Housing and other legal service providers to see if there can be some sort of solution, and get back to Laura or others who might be interested in this.
Yes, that's a very detailed question from Laura. Very excellent question. So I won't try and answer it right now, but I'll follow up with Laura and we can talk about that. So.
Yeah, and I would just like to note that it's very helpful for us to learn about these kind of barriers because sometimes we're not being necessarily in courts or working directly with clients. We don't know that something like this might be a challenge until someone brings it to our attention. So thank you. And please feel free to continue to let us know about those. Okay, Bob, I'm going to hand it back to you. That's all the questions that I saw, at least in the chat.
Okay, very good. So we'll watch the interviews with Senator Hunter. You'll see how well we can manipulate the videos, because actually she sent 4 separate videos. It's a total of about 11 minutes. They're mostly like 1.5 minutes or 2 minutes. There's one that's 5 minutes. And she's in her office in Springfield. Again, it looks dark outside. So I think she recorded these late last night or very early, or maybe early this morning, maybe when she was waiting for the Senate to go back into session. So, and she basically kind of runs through the questions that we were going to ask her. And I think let me share my screen here. I think this first video here is her just talking a bit about her interest in housing issues and a little bit of personal background. So see, I'll go to the next video. This one's about 90 seconds.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for having me here today. I am State Senator Mattie Hunter, representing the 3rd Legislative District. I'm excited about being here today with my colleagues to discuss our affordable housing legislation that we passed this past spring session. I became interested in housing issues from personal experience. My whole life I've lived in Chicago. I spent about 18 years of my childhood, junior high, up until I finished college. So that's about 18 years living in public housing. on the south side, Robert Taylor Homes, which is part of the area that I represent up and down State Street. And I've seen firsthand the inequities in the housing industry, discriminatory practices, and unequal access of communities of color to have better housing conditions have driven me to pursue solutions for the communities I represent. Like a lot of people in this country, many of my constituents are going through hard times. Many people in the district I represent are dealing with public safety issues on top of trying to figure out what's going to happen to them after the eviction moratorium is over. And I'm sure other communities can relate.
Very good. Thank you, Senator Hunter, for that response. And I'm going to switch to a different video now. So this one, she talks a little bit like Senator Gillespie did about the omnibus bill, and also about kind of her focus on housing issues. Senator Hunter has sponsored many affordable housing bills over the years, and many of them pass, but like everything in Springfield, not everything passes. And so she actually talks a little bit about kind of the struggles working on housing issues and trying to get certain things to pass. So this video is about 5.5 minutes.
So I'm sure you all would like to know how did Senator Feigenholz and Gillespie and I decide to collaborate on, or how did the creation of an omnibus bill take place? Well, for the past 5 years before Gillespie and Feigenholz came over to the Senate, I have been working on affordable housing issues for about 5 years. Okay, and I couldn't get enough of my colleagues to vote to get this thing done, and there were some other things. Rent control was all a part of it, and many of you all worked with me on rent control issues, and many of you were very angry with me because I couldn't get a rent control bill passed. Well, that's because I needed votes and I didn't have them. Okay, so many of those people who were against rent control and some other advances in affordable housing are gone now. A whole group of new people like um, Feigenholz left the House and came over to the Senate. Gillespie is there, and some other whole bunch of other new legislators are there, and they basically understand the issues that communities of color face as it relates to affordable housing, inequities, and all those kinds of things. And so Gillespie had a bill dealing with affordable housing in the Arlington Heights area. Feigenholz had a piece of up on the north side, and in that Boys Town area and parts of her district. And my bill, I had my affordable housing bill. So some of them were a tax credit, and then the others was that we just needed some monies to fund these initiatives. And so we kept going back and forth as to how we were going to get this affordable housing piece done. So it looked like for a long time that we were just going to present separate standalone bills, one for Feigenholz, one for me, and one for Gillespie. And then all of a sudden, Gillespie and I said, well, no, let's put together the whole package, turn it into one bill, make it an omnibus bill. And so we kept going back and forth. And in spite of us speaking about separate bills, we continued to talk and have conference calls with the three of us and some of the stakeholders, like you all, and the tax assessor's offices, and we continued to meet with all of these people. And so we finally decided, we put the time in, we may as well stay together. And next thing you know, we had an omnibus bill. It's hard for me to say that name. Okay, so that's how we came up with that. So then we were trying to figure out how in the world are we going to fund this massive kind of bill. My bill at the time was a tax credit bill, and I needed about at least $30 million a year for my tax credit piece of it. And so the others wasn't as demanding as mine, although my bill was a more of a long-term kind of thingy, you know. And so thank God Biden came into office. He came out with the federal ARPA, and we finally, like, I mean, literally the last hour, like May 28th, the federal guidelines came down as to how you can utilize some of um, the federal ARPA dollars. Although we could not use it, and they made it very clear, excuse me, the feds, that we could not use it towards tax credits. And so then our budget people kept reading it and reading. They said, hey, you know, we could use this as a grant program. We said, what? A grant program? So we wind up with $75 million. So my project went from a tax credit to a grant program. So we put $75 million for affordable housing in a grant program. Okay. And boy, oh boy, that's unheard of. And it looks like we're going to be able to put that kind of money, 75 million a year, for 3 years. So there are, well, that equates to something like maybe 3,500 units, rental units, that we could possibly utilize. We can renovate or use these dollars on, you know. We can build. It takes longer to build, so it's best to renovate, to put people into clean, safe, affordable housing. So that's how we got to that point, okay?
Again, thank you, Senator Hunter, for that good response. So there's just a couple more videos. There's this one. I think the next two videos are each about 2 minutes.
Thus, we created the COVID-19 Affordable Housing Grant Program, which I mentioned earlier, which will fund the development of up to that 3,500 affordable rental homes or apartments by December 31st of 2021. The Illinois Housing Development Authority, IDA, will make best efforts to prioritize the grant program that serves areas mostly impacted by COVID-19. They must utilize women, veterans, and minority-owned contractors. They must utilize organized labor and contract with apprenticeship programs. So we're putting people to work, y'all. We're putting people into clean, affordable housing. You know, we're stabilizing families. And on top of that, we're improving the quality of life for individuals and family members. How about that? Okay. So we're making government work for all of us. In addition, the Cook County Assessor's Office will be required to consider the actual or projected income on a property that is a low-income housing project. For all other county assessors, the measure requires an emphasis for income approach when assessing such properties, but does not mandate it. So 2 different property tax incentives will be created for rehabilitation and new construction of affordable housing units to track the lack of affordable housing in areas of need, as well as areas of high opportunity. Okay.
Very good. So there's one more video. Obviously, a key thing that Senator Hunter said in the earlier video is that obviously to pass things, you need to have the votes. And if you don't have the votes, they don't pass. So obviously that's why we appreciate working with all our members and allies across the state and our other advocacy partners to reach out to legislators to make sure that we do have enough support, because it's great to have, we need to have a critical mass of champions who are really taking the lead, but we need to have, we need to have 60 votes in the House and 30 votes in the Senate, and ideally far more than that to pass these bills. And in the end, I think everything that we passed this year passed unanimously or close to it, based on lots of negotiation with various interest groups and so forth. So this is the final video from Senator Hunter. It's just a couple of minutes. And thanks for everyone who stayed with the meeting so far. We're have one more short video after this.
So I am hopeful that we will retain and continue this collaboration so that we can continue to prioritize housing issues in the future. We all know that affordable housing was definitely one of the most pressing needs of the pandemic, and of course, prior to the pandemic as well, okay? So it's really important that I think that Illinois is doing relatively well getting rental assistance out. You know, they've done a great job in getting it out. They hit a little backlog. It's still a backlog now, but they are getting the monies out, which is a great thing, especially in comparison to other states. And I personally would like to see more financial aid programs available to those who need it the most. So it is my hope that the legislative efforts of my colleagues and I do not end here, but for us to continue to focus on other affordable housing initiatives that will benefit our communities for several years to come. And who knows, perhaps we may need to create an affordable housing caucus. We have so many other caucuses, so one more won't hurt, will it? We shall see. Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye. And thank you guys for helping us get to this point, because we would not have had an affordable housing initiative without you all's assistance in your all of your work and your wonderful, fantastic ideas and thinking out the box, you guys. You guys were just so darn creative. So thank you very much. Really appreciate all your efforts. And God bless you. Bye.
Okay. So, like I said, we do have one. I know we're running a little bit over time. We'll be done with the meeting by 1:30 at the latest. That's correct, Sharon, right? Is there?
Yeah, right, Kurt. Why don't we go ahead and show this video, and then we can wrap up, answer any last minute questions. But I think it's important to let folks see the legislators. So.
Okay, very good. 1 second. Let me just get the screen share.
And thank you, Bob, for being both a facilitator and text expert on this.
Very good. Yeah, no problem. And you're seeing, hopefully you're seeing Representative Guzzardi here. It looks like he's at home. This was shot earlier today, I think maybe like at 11:45 a.m. This is 5.5 minutes. And again, Representative Guzzardi is chair of the Housing Committee in the House. He's from Logan Square and other parts of the Northwest Side, including parts of like Portage Park and Avondale. And he's been one of our main allies in the General Assembly ever since he's got elected several years ago. So here we go.
Hi, Housing Action Illinois. I'm so sorry I can't be there with you live today. I have another commitment, but I'm really happy to be joining you through this video message. I hope the conference is going well. I just want to say a few words as we get kicked off here, join my other legislative colleagues in thanking you so much for your tremendous work. The housing movement in the state just wouldn't be what it is without the leadership of Housing Action Illinois. So deeply grateful to you all, grateful to my colleagues who are here. I'll just say a few words about my work in the housing space, and then I'll turn it over to my colleagues to answer your questions. So my name is Will Guzzardi. I'm the state representative from the 39th district. My district's on the northwest side of Chicago, and it covers Logan Square, Belmont-Cragen, Portage Park, and a bit of Avondale. I've been the rep here for 7 years. I'm in my 4th term, and I'm the chair of the new Housing Committee, which I'll talk about a little bit more in just a minute. But my passion for housing issues really comes from living and working in and representing the community that I live in. I moved to Logan Square in 2009 after I finished college, and I watched over the years as the neighborhood rapidly changed, experienced sort of intense gentrification, and I watched what that did to our community, that it displaced thousands, if not tens of thousands, of Latino and Latina residents, and it really just created a sort of seismic shift in the culture and feel and environment of the neighborhood. And of course, you know, with economic development comes lots of benefits, but the challenges of displacement, of gentrification, of pushing people out of their longtime homes, they're so profound. And it sometimes, at least in Logan Square over the last decade, has felt like a juggernaut that couldn't be stopped. But what I've learned and what I've sought to accomplish in my work is that it can be stopped, or at least slowed or mitigated. The harmful effects can be checked by smart, thoughtful policy making at every level of government. Whether that's building more affordable housing in communities that are experiencing rapid gentrification, whether it's providing support to longtime homeowners so that rising property taxes don't force them out of their homes, whether it's providing rental assistance and subsidies to help make sure that people can stay where they are. There's a variety of tools and techniques that are at our disposal that you all are pioneering and leading the way on, that can help keep our communities more whole and help keep people in their homes and keep people in the neighborhoods that they love. So I'll talk briefly about the Housing Committee and about the omnibus bill that we passed this year. The Housing Committee was formed this year in the Illinois House, and really owes its existence to the leadership of Leader Ramirez, who I know is with you today, who really insisted to the new speaker that there be a housing committee. And because of her role in leadership, she was unable to also chair that committee, so she asked if I'd be willing to step in and chair it. And it's been an incredible opportunity. I'm so grateful to her for fighting for the creation of this committee and supporting me in my work as chair. We've done a lot. We've had a lot of hearings. We've had lots of great information shared. We've got a lot of people in the legislature more focused on housing just by virtue of the committee existing. And it was the venue through which we debated and ultimately passed this omnibus legislation that I was the sponsor of and that you all were, again, such great champions of. The omnibus bill does a lot of things, and I'm sure you guys will get into more of this later on, but you know, the general objective here is to take, first of all, some of this American Rescue Plan funding that we got from the federal government and put it toward making sure that new affordable housing construction can be financed and built in the state of Illinois. And then also creating a variety of property tax related mechanisms to encourage the creation and the rehabilitation, really, of existing affordable housing units to make sure that they stay affordable, that landlords can fix these units up and keep their rents reasonable. There are a variety of other measures in the bill that you all maybe will get into more detail on in the course of the afternoon. But I'll conclude my piece here by saying that this bill that we passed was an amazing step for housing justice in the state, and there's so much more to do, as you all know. There are so many unhoused people in our state. There's so much housing insecurity in our state, and there's such a need for new, affordable, livable family housing in every corner of Illinois. So I look forward to working with you, the wonderful community of advocates who's been leading the way on this issue. I look forward to hearing from you about what needs to be done and to leading with you in Springfield to make sure that we're fighting for the best outcomes for our communities. So thank you so much for your leadership, for your advocacy. Again, I wish I could be with you there live today, but thanks for letting me tune in, and please be in touch. Let me know how I can help support the work you do. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, no more videos. Thanks for everyone who stuck with that. And again, that was all because the General Assembly was in session until actually early this morning, debating a bunch of things. So it wreaked havoc with the schedules and travel plans of our speakers. But we're very thankful that Sarah Gillespie could join us in person. And thanks for Leader Ramirez and Rep. Guzzardi and Senator Hunter the Majority Caucus Chair in the Senate, for joining us via videos that they've all recorded either last night or today. So I'll turn it back over to Sharon.
Great. Thanks, Bob. I just want to mention that we know that there was a comment in chat around housing banishment laws. And so that's just something I want to know that, we acknowledge. And I think that there are things that are being worked on from an advocacy perspective with Chicago 400 and others. But we are running late. So I wanted to thank everyone who stayed with us. I want to thank the legislators again. We can't always control what happens in the General Assembly, but technology is actually our friend right now. So thank you for joining us. We also want to encourage people who are not members of Housing Action Illinois. If your organizations would like to join, please go ahead and sign up. We are only as strong as our coalition, and it's really great now, but we could do more, and we have legislative champions willing to work with us on that. We also have our conference coming up where we're going to do deeper dives into some of these topics as well as other topics. And it's part of a national forum, so you'll have an opportunity to also hear what's going on in other states. I think that is it. Oh, no, there'll be an email with materials to follow up. And you see that, and thank you for the chat, that there'll be links in the follow-up email. So that is it. And I'm going to go ahead and call it right now. Just wanted to thank everyone for joining us.
Thank you.